All right. So, Brianna, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me what you're doing, what your background is, what you'd like to be doing, what you don't like doing. Give me some info.
Definitely. I've been freelancing for quite a while. I am I'm a graphic designer and I also do some illustration as well. I have a few freelance clients on rotation, so I kind of I get projects from them. I've had contracts and it kind of runs the full gamut, but I really would like to kind of get like in house at a place. Like I kind of just want to move up a little bit and get into a new job. I have, let me see, a pretty good. I think I have a pretty good list of experience, and let me see if I can bring my portfolio up. I think you might have it.
Yep, I have it.
So one of my biggest clients is Magical Butter. So I'm still currently working with them. I also have worked with Sorted Solutions. So I just more recently got some web design experience. Of course, I design my own portfolio, but you can't really tell that to clients when they're like, "Oh, do you have any web design experience?" You can show your own, but they're really looking for more so of like other kind of like brands that you've done and such. I have logo design. I've been doing that for a little while. I actually did just straight up do logo design for, was it new product consulting as well. And so there's some of that. I don't know. I think I have like probably 5 or 6 years about kind of like 4 more solid, like consistent years in freelancing. So that's a little bit of what I've been doing, and I'm trying to get more solid work and get in-house position that I really like. But it seems that they are very competitive. I do really well with interviews. I get a lot of interviews, and it's usually I am looking for a remote job, so I do know that that kind of like ups the ante a lot. Um, I also am just trying to get an outside perspective from other people. Like, do they see me as mid-level? Is my work looking where it should at this point? Kind of like from an outside perspective, what I might be missing or what it's lacking, and overall, um, I guess kind of what are my strengths and what I could play on a little bit more to achieve, just kind of push on to the next level.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So,
There's a lot of projects. I have seen a couple of your, I think, TikTok videos, and you've mentioned that having less is sometimes more. So I know
yeah.
that I'm kind of potentially breaking that rule a little bit.
Yeah. So, I'm just gonna share my screen really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. Let's go from there. So first, let's talk about experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think let's look at this. So sorted solutions. Now you mentioned like these are freelance things, like sorted solutions,
Yes.
magical butter. These are kind of freelance positions.
Mm-hmm.
What in what capacity is it freelancing? Like, do they just kind of reach out whenever they need you? Are you there?
Oh,
Um, once, are you there a certain time during the week or whatever it may be? Give me some background.
sorry, I think it disconnected. Are you trying to ask like what capacity, like how often am I working with them?
Yeah, like is it a freelance where they just reach out when they need you, or is it,
So
are you there during the week?
for sorted solutions, that's about 20 hours a week. And then for Magical Butter, it's kind of as many projects as I can handle. They kind of, it can be more sporadic if I have other clients, but usually like it's a commission, like I would say like once a month, like once every 2 months, depends on how fast things are going. New product consulting, that's a bit older. I'm not really with them anymore. I actually, I they said they would bring me on, like they would, try to see if they have any more projects, but things slowed down. So there's a lot more experience on my portfolio experience page, but it's just not listed because I can't. I think those are some good examples of what I'm capable of and what I've done, but there's more that I just don't put in there because I think it would just be too much. So that's just the most recent.
Mhm. Gotcha. Okay. So,
Mhm.
2020 to
New
present.
product consulting was like one project every 2 weeks, I would say. So it was like a bi-weekly project, and it was based on hourly.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
So I think like there is some organizing and some like sorting that can happen here.
Mhm.
Let's see. You graduated or you did BFA. When did you graduate? Oswego?
I think it was like 2017.
2017. Okay.
Mhm.
So 6 years out of school.
Mhm.
I so I think like it's kind of hard to
To place an experience level, I agree.
I
If
think
you were
it's
going to.
hard to show like how you like what you're doing right now is like when I look at this as someone, let's just like I'm a recruiter or I'm HR at some place and I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, you have two jobs. You have graphic designer at Sorted Solutions and you have Magical Butter, right?
Mhm.
Because you're kind of presenting those as like like full-time roles in a sense, right?
Mhm.
There's nothing here that's really mentioning that you're freelancing for them. So I don't know if that is the best way. It doesn't immediately click to me as like that's the best way to present it.
Mhm.
Um, and then so this like branding systems at new product consulting, uh, like that gives me a period of like, okay, from 2022 to 2023, you were at a role.
Mhm.
Various companies, like it's not painting a picture. You're giving me
Mhm.
like a bunch of messy kind of like, hey, I did some stuff here, I did some stuff here. And so in my mind, I think of this as like there's an opportunity here that you can kind of get specific about like some of the roles. Now, like give me a little bit of information about this bucket of 2015 to present, right? Because
Mhm.
again, like that's the only thing that I have a definitive date for is new product consulting.
Right.
So what is this designer and consultant bucket here?
So I was actually so basically I was seeing and you know speaking with a mentor in graphic design, Julie Cornoni. She was helping me, and so I found her off of ADP list, and I'm not sure. Well, she didn't really make a comment on that specifically. However, I kind of left it in because I essentially started freelancing in school, but I would say 2 years out from school, it became a little bit more serious. Obviously, I had more time and I was more dedicated to it. I'd been moving around a lot, so I kind of just decided freelancing was the way to go for the time being. And so there's just a lot of various companies. I mean, I would put out ads online and forums, and I would be throwing out my portfolio in different places. I would get people contract me for different things like t-shirts, logos, like, you know, it just ran the entire gamut of work. And so Magical Butter is more of like a consistent client. I have a few other consistent clients, and I guess like that's kind of like the catch all section, showing that I've been active, even if I don't have specific years to kind of like write down where I was just doing one off projects. Because let me see if I can go.
So really quickly, like I would think of it this way, right? Everyone freelances as a graphic designer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone freelances.
Right.
Whether you do it before school, during school, after school, everyone's freelancing. Everyone's picking up things, tasks, jobs. Everyone does that. And
Mm-hmm.
at some level, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't
Right.
count as experience. And so in a way, like what I'm kind of getting is the only real like job experience is this new product consulting. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
Like where you
Yeah, I
had a
think that's
full-time
fair.
role?
I think that
Okay.
might be confusing to people, and so I've had a hard time trying to find a way to describe kind of the things that you're talking about.
So I think like let's kind of like accept that you have a full-time role that is from 2022, 2023, a full year. That's one instance of experience. If you have other instances of that, sure, you can absolutely put that down. But I think
Mm-hmm.
when we're approaching this and looking at this through the lens of, HR or a recruiter or something, that's what they're going to hold on to. That's what they're going to look
Right.
at. Right. Because that's saying like, hey, yes, I worked in an office or I worked in a job setting with a team and I wasn't, I was working with other members of the organization. That's the thing. All of the
Mm-hmm.
other stuff, while great, yes, like you're freelancing, you're getting your rounds in, you're doing work, you're working, you're building that skill up. That's absolutely valuable. It doesn't necessarily count towards this idea of experience. Now, granted, I'm not taking away the fact that you have 6 years of experience. Yeah, you've been doing this for a while. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to be a little bit more clear on that. Like, I think you need to be, I almost think like, you graduated, when did you say?
2017.
2017. Okay. So one, I think like you need to clear, I think we need to reorganize this resume a bit. One,
Yeah.
I think we need to have the graduation date on there. So first thing I'm gonna draw some stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of layout, this is what I would do. I would say that you need to get away from this 2 column and make it sort of like 1 column or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the top, I need to see experience, and then the rest is whatever else. I'm not a big fan of listing skills. Like
Interesting. Okay.
like the work that you've done and the descriptions that you include about where you've worked should tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would also assume that the roles that you're applying to mean that you have some skills in that. So if you're applying to a web design role, I want to
It should be
know
there.
it should be there, or your portfolio should have projects in there that deal with web design, right? I don't need
Mm-hmm.
to know that your skill is in design consulting. It should be, right? I don't need to know
Right.
that. I think it's wasted space. As a graphic designer, I would assume that you can go from web design to merchandise design, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
not different. You're just working with different mediums, brand identity and strategy, same thing. GIF, animation, and digital, is that really a skill people are asking for? Like, hey, I need a designer that makes GIFs. Is that really like,
Fair
this just
enough.
seems kind of like an
Yeah.
arbitrary section that you're trying to reach for things that may get their attention, which I think is just wasted space. Let's go down to software. Again, another thing, software. I think it's just arbitrary information that doesn't really need to be there. This is taking up space that we can then focus on more important things like your experience and the descriptions that you're including with those roles and
Mm-hmm.
opportunities. Google Suite, yeah,
Yeah.
Squarespace, sure. But again, like, this isn't information that a role is necessarily going to be, like, at least in my mind, they're not going to ask you, hey, have you worked with Squarespace before? If they ask you that, sure, yeah, but like, you don't need to call that out.
Mm-hmm.
Slack, Asana, Basecamp, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they're going to expect you to jump into a role, use whatever tools that they're using, and learn them if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, more important. A section that can kind of get rid of. Interests. Again, like, I I believe that these are things that can come through in other places. You don't need to be using your resume, which is, really valuable for instances like this to kind of show that. You can do it in a way, granted, hey, listen, like, going back to what I said before, my resume was very much I had instead of this saying education, this said experience. And then I had this big column here that had each of my roles with the time, the company, and the description, just one by one. And then um, below that, I had a section. I did have a section that said skills, but I used that in a way to mess around, right? Because I knew it was sort of arbitrary. So, like, instead of like things like design consulting or whatever, I had like I'm a great cook, or like I had that I do a podcast, right? Like that was my opportunity to show the other things that I did. And I only had two of them, and with like one sentence, just to be funny, just to be like, cheeky. Below that, then I had my education, which was, like I said, the school I went to, when I started, when I graduated, my GPA, whatever, and that was it. Sure, you can have the foundations of user experience. That's great. Strategy of content marketing. These are perfect. Definitely mention those. But like that was it. I wanted to keep my resume as simple as possible and really focus on the experience. Now, going back to the experience part, because we kind of just mentioned that like the real full-time role that you've had is with new product consulting. I think that needs to be the second thing. And I think you need to I think you need to figure out how to present this kind of thing that you've been freelancing.
So
So
if I had like a contract that I did for like say 3 months, that's not a lot of time, and I did fulfill my contract, which came to a natural end. But at the time, I kind of thought, I could talk a little bit more about the stuff that I was doing while freelancing with that, various companies spiel. Would you include a 3-month contract? Because I thought that it was a little bit on the shorter side to include that rather than have something like designer and consultant there.
no, I wouldn't. But what I was about to say was I would almost have like the headline, right? So if we're looking at this, so let's just for a second say that this says experience here. Hold on. This section says experience. And then your roles are listed out like new product consulting, freelance, whatever, right? I would have this heading style say freelance. I would say, and whether you have that as like that you're like a name like Brianna Messina Consulting, whatever, up to you. And then I would have under that kind of like what you're doing, sorted solutions, and then the things that you did there. Then I'd have that same heading, magical butter, and the things that you did there. Because at the end of the day, realistically, they're going to look at freelance as sort of like not, they're going to look at it as experience as a graphic designer, but not experience when it comes to working in a full-time role. And that's just like kind of the, like,
The truth. No,
that's
I
not,
agree.
that's not my opinion. That's just kind of like how it falls on to people who aren't necessarily designers or creatives.
I think that's kind of what's been happening for a while. So that's kind of where my confusion has been. And I've actually been trying to find a way to kind of convey that in a way that's helpful to me.
Yeah, and it's not it's I don't know if like putting a specific time on these. So like for magical butter, right? Like you have that since 2020, right? It's not crazy to think that you could you could potentially just list that as a role, and just instead of having it say present, just put it down as July 2023. Because there you go. That's 3 years of experience right there that you just pulled out of nowhere, right? And that is a company you've worked with. I'm assuming you worked with a couple of people from that company. And you can use that in a way as quote unquote a full-time role. It may not be full-time in 40 hours a week. It may not be full-time as in an office, but that's 3 years of
Mhm.
experience that you worked with a company and you assisted and were in on conversations and things like that. And so I think it's okay to be tweaking that a little bit so that it clicks with the people that are looking at these things. Because right now, like when I see present, 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 I'm just kind of assuming like, yeah, you're working with them here and there, but like on a freelance, on a consulting or on a contract basis. And sure, that might be the case,
Mhm.
but it doesn't make sense to me that you have three different things going on right now in the present, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that might be something that you can kind of think about. Same thing with the sorted solutions. If we kind of continue to pull on this thread, right? Like
Mhm.
it's maybe that's the one thing that you have as present, right? Because that shows that you're kind of working with someone now. Um, and I think you need to kind of think about like how do you approach that conversation of like, oh, well, you just started in 2023. Um, why are you already looking or something like that? Then you can kind
Mhm.
of go into the conversation. Well, it's actually a freelance contract. I've been working with them for a little bit. But right now I'm looking to kind of pursue more full-time roles within an organization.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense. But when you were, just to recap, when you were talking about listing experience and then having like bullet points under freelance, I would still list Magical Butter under that and not put it as a full-time role then.
I don't know. I think you could kind of get away with just listing it as like as a role. I don't think it needs to
Mhm.
necessarily be under the freelance bucket. Again, like
Okay.
I think like maybe that's not the best way to have maybe the heading isn't freelance and maybe it says like Brianna Messina design, whatever.
Right.
And maybe that description is more about like how you independently work with multiple companies and you help them create certain things, focus on different aspects of design or something like that. And then maybe that's your opportunity to list a couple of companies as well. um Me personally, like I'm not a huge fan of like bullet points. Let me see, what did I have? Let me see if I could just pull up my personal resume that I use. I haven't updated it in a couple of years now, but just for reference. So hiring stuff, resume. Okay, here we go. So, and I think like this is going to be helpful in the sense that like also this kind of gives you an idea of what I mean by simplifying it a lot.
Mhm.
So this is my resume. This was my resume. Like I said, my thought is that you focus on the experience, right? So my quick contact information, my experience, including the dates, the roles, what I did, blah, blah, blah. And then 3 to 4 sentences of like the key responsibilities. So for example, like when I worked at this role, like communicate and strategize with critical business units to reshape the market offerings, lead the design and development for all direct consumer and B2B initiatives, identify opportunities to design and develop internal tools to strengthen e-commerce capabilities, right? I don't, I'm not a, the reason why I'm not a big fan of bullet points is because I think I can just kind of like wordsmith that to be one cohesive quick read description.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't need to get super, bullet points kind of leads you to think like you need to get a little bit more specific on each point, like I did
Mhm.
this and then like these are the other things. And that's kind of like, I think what's happening a little bit on yours as well, where like you have thoughtfully visualizing a brand, promise with color typography, selecting color themes. Like, I don't want to know that you're selecting color schemes, like
Right.
that's what I'm gonna assume you do as a designer. I want to think of the big overarching things that I did at these roles, right?
Mhm.
Designing emails and landing pages as sales funnels. So, you know, there's a way to wordsmith that to sound a little bit more, bumped up, right? Like
Mhm.
uh sure, sales funnels is a good phrasing. Strategizing and developing sales funnels to grow or to reach new prospects and market software to existing customers, to grow bottom line revenue. You want to kind of think a little bit more businessy here, like, why were you doing those things? How is that helping the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I just read about the role that I had previously, like, yeah, I did a lot of designing. I did a lot of illustration, typography, motion, color, all this stuff. At the end of the day, the goal of those things were all in um, alignment with either, developing new internal tools for the company to access, that marketing information, to have better insight and better visibility to how customers are purchasing. Like, these are the kind of things you want to think about, right? Like, we're
Mm-hmm.
getting too in the nitty-gritty details about design stuff that, quite frankly, no one else cares about except maybe you and I,
Mm-hmm.
that the people on the other side reading this stuff is going to be like, okay, yeah, I mean, they're creative. I would think they can do some of this stuff,
Right. I think that's some great feedback. Honestly, that's probably the most critical feedback I've had so far in a while. But I treasure that a lot, and I've been looking for this for a while because I think you've probably told me a lot of things that some people try to, I've met quite a few mentors off of ADP list, and they're all very nice. And I've had some really great experiences with Julie, and she's helped a lot. But I feel like you've said some of the things that some of them are hesitant to kind of get at. But it's
Yeah, I'm
really
not,
good advice.
and it's not, this is not, it's not negative. Like, I want you to get a job, I want you to find this thing. And so I want
Mm-hmm.
you to like, I'm not going to sugarcoat, but
Right.
like I said, I'm on your team, and this is all
No, I
from
appreciate it.
experience of, like, we need to think about the people that are looking at this stuff aren't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily creative. And so we need to kind of think about how to approach that and sort of, in a way, diffuse the way that we describe it and align it with how they're actually going to read it.
Right.
And so, yeah, at times, like, I could sugarcoat these things and say, like, oh, like, this is fine and blah, blah, blah. But, like, that's
Mm-hmm.
not going to help you at the end of the day,
Right.
And so, like,
It's
none
best
of
not.
this is in a negative, way, but it is more so to try and, like, realistically figure out, how do we, like, get some results here? How do we kind of improve on this stuff? And
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's helpful,
No,
like,
it
I
is
hope that's
it's
the
extremely
case.
helpful.
So,
I've been looking for this kind of critique in a while. I think that's actually how I found you because I am scouring those like forums and those different boards and reading people's opinions on portfolios and they have discussions even on Reddit, and I've been looking around, so it is very, very helpful. And I really hope that there's going to be a copy of this video somewhere so I can take more notes because that's
yes.
really great feedback.
So let's really quickly go through let's go through your portfolio website.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll notice that some of these things are highlighted in blue. It's just like a language plugin that I have on my
Oh.
browser.
Mm-hmm.
So don't worry, it's not actually there. Um what are you using for your portfolio? You said you made it yourself?
Squarespace.
Squarespace, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. Um let's see. This is so really quickly. This is a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of information here. Oh, nice little green highlight. Nice.
Thank you.
Um, I would couple of questions here. Does this background of the pencil and the stars and the leaves, like, does that represent you? Is that you?
I was trying something different. I can get rid of it. This is actually revamped because I've changed it a lot in the past year, and I was trying to do something with parallax because I like the idea of being able to kind of just like scroll down and have the parallax because I'm trying to show off some cool web skills, and then have links to different projects. I just didn't want it to be like stark white, and then if you don't have a background, the parallax doesn't really work. So I can scrap that. I'm not like, married to it, but I just thought it was a cool little thing, little extra.
A little bit of a shiny object trick, right?
Yeah, it pretty much.
Yeah. And hey, listen, it's great that you went and did it. You now know how to do it. That's fine. Right.
Hmm.
Great job on that. I kind of think like there's so this how are you sent like when you're applying to jobs, like is it most do you have a presentation that you're sending? Are you just sending your website? Like what's that?
Um, I just sent my website. I think I've only been asked for a presentation like once, and it was for a job that I wasn't prioritizing as much, one that I really wasn't as interested in, so I just haven't gone forward and made a new one. I'm not even sure if I can find the old one like at the moment, but I've just been kind of like revamping this website. And then if they ask for a cover letter, I'll actually put it in my Dropbox and paste the Dropbox link in the cover letter thing, because it's a lot. I have kind of a nice, like, I would say, template that I've created, and I've had a couple of people go over it. I think it's okay. I'm kind of always trying to work on this. I'm always trying to add to it and just get as many people's opinions as I can. So far, adding the Dropbox link has worked, but you don't always need a cover letter. So I just kind of paste this link in where the portfolio, they'll ask for like a web link. I give my LinkedIn, and I know that it's a little redundant, but I do have that check out my work experience link in the paragraph above, even though I have, the link on the right-hand corner. I do that just so people, make sure to click on it, because I don't think the resume is like a full, it doesn't really show everything I've done. So I like to be able to have people check out the experience link as well.
Mhm.
I just try to get everything in front of people. I think that's the way I've been going about it. And then I do want to scrap the way those recommendations look. Um, not totally happy with it, but I did want to kind of put in some testimonials, I guess you could call them.
Sure, yeah. No, and I think testimonials are great. Um, okay. This I want you to I'm gonna say something that I want you to think about, right? Um,
Mhm.
first, like let's when we're presenting work like this, right? Like so now that we've talked about the resume and how you might want to shift some of that stuff, right? To kind of give a sense of timing a little bit better and show that experience.
Mhm.
Um, let's like thing that jumps out for me. I work for Magical Butter. I worked with Magical Butter. What's this word? To provide marketing assets and design merchandise. All projects start with a brief. Of course they do. We know that.
Yeah. There's
Um,
probably a lot of redundant stuff.
yeah. And so like we want to rethink some of these descriptions. Um, and again, like same thing that we talked about in terms of how we want to prioritize that resume. I think we want to do the same. We want to approach the same with these projects, right? So yes, you might
Mhm.
have done a lot of merch stuff, a lot of advertising stuff. Is there something in this project or in all of the work that you did that you could say is like the number one, the biggest thing that you did, right? Like what is that big top thing, that big project, that big meaty part of it that you did maybe? Maybe it's the logos, maybe it's a web design, maybe it's maybe it is like a more complete merch drop or something, right? But we want
Mhm.
to think of like what is that big flashy part of the 3 years that you worked with them? And then we want to start, and then this is where we start to prioritize of like, okay, then what was number two? Then what was number three, four, and five? Because I think like, yes, you may have done a lot of merch stuff and you may have done a lot of email marketing, but and if those are the major things, we want to think about like how do we pull out the more like what was like the main focus, right? So again, like thinking about how we present this stuff, like yeah, you might have done a lot of email marketing, but maybe
Mhm.
that was because like the main focus of the company at the time was to grow their email list from this to this, right? Because the email was providing a more consistent um opportunity to grow revenue or something like that, right? Like what are those business goals and what are those business
Okay.
objectives?
Kind of
Because
like
like
analytics maybe, and like, data.
sure, yeah, but I mean like that's gonna really help because like the thing, unfortunately, what I have kind of like noticed is when we have a lot of things like email design, right? Or like that you're just designing templates for emails and merch. Like those aren't really big projects, you know, like those aren't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like helping with big problems in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so how do we kind of present them in that way, right? So like obviously email is a very important thing for companies, especially when you're a direct consumer brand. Like that is your main channel of communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we talk about the stuff that you made in a way that like kind of speaks to that objective, right? So it's like, yeah, I did a ton of different emails, but in each email I was trying to make sure that there was a consistent theme so that customers recognized our brand, right?
Okay.
And maybe there were different campaigns that we had to concept for. So with this brand there was a season or a part of the year where we had different flavors in season, right? And maybe we had different summer sales and things like that that we wanted to really draw attention to. um
Mm-hmm.
I'm also curious, like, so this October I was creating a logo, blah blah blah, year's anniversary, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. So it wasn't necessarily the logo itself, like, because the M mark is the logo, correct?
Yes. So, but they did temporarily change it. I don't know if I have a screenshot of it somewhere. I mean, not that it really makes a difference, but they essentially wanted to change, I think, the logo on their website and kind of like on their online branding. It would be a lot of work, so I don't think they did it in a ton of places, but they did add that on their social media for like, I think, the month.
Gotcha. And
Mm-hmm.
so
It's like
what
promotional.
you were responsible for are kind of like the palms around it, the 10 years, things like that.
Yes. There
Okay.
are actually more designs for that. That's why I said the process. You can find it here because that was not the only design I did. That was the one they selected that they liked the most. I thought there were like some more fun things that I did. Oh, that's loading so slowly. I try to optimize it. But yeah, if you
I'm
scroll.
in Thailand, so Wi-Fi is not
Oh,
necessarily the
okay.
the best,
There's
but
supposed to be smaller files, but it's all the way at the bottom for the magical butter one because I kind of wanted to show. Yes, there it is. So those are the three ones that the middle one was like the most fun, kind of like redrawing that M and do something fun. But they wanted to go with like a birthday party theme initially, so I tried to do that, and they're like, oh, we can't have we can't have like the marketing officer, or we can't have someone approve this. It's kind of like short notice because it was like just an idea for them that they wanted to do. It's kind of quick turnaround. So just because they didn't have enough people talking about it and like they couldn't approve it in time, we went with the one on the left. So it was kind of a little bit more like just badge looking,
mhm.
but I
And
didn't
that's
like
all
the.
fine. That's all fine and dandy. I think like the other thing I'm noticing just with your portfolio website in general is that like you have to go to all these different places to get all this
Mm-hmm.
information. And so the next thing so one, I would just take all this and put it in the same
Mm-hmm.
project. The other
Okay.
thing I want you to think about in just how you should structure potentially your portfolio website is, what if we were to simplify this down to like 2 pages, right? Like your
Right.
homepage, and then the second page would just be like, well, it's not really 2 pages in essence, but it's like 2 page layout. So like your homepage includes everything, includes, your heading that gives you like, hey, my name's Brianna, like I'm a designer located in New York. I work with these types of brands or these types of companies,
Mm-hmm.
or I do this type of design, whatever. Then there is a little about me section that goes into a little bit more detail. Maybe that's your opportunity to include some of
Okay.
your interests, right? Like that you have on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a section that is just like your 3 best projects. Below that is a section for experience. And, obviously you can like shift that around. These are tiles essentially. So maybe the
Definitely.
experience comes before that. And
Mm-hmm.
then at the bottom, it is your contact me, get in touch, whatever call to action. And the only other places that I can go from here are projects and homepage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like there's a lot of like I think what's happening here is that like you're you're building all these other pages and you're kind of losing like not necessarily steam, but like when I get to the experience, like I wouldn't say the experience page is doing a lot for me,
Right.
like I'd rather just see this list not collapsed. Hold on one second. I'd rather just see this list exposed a little bit on the homepage. I'd rather just see like I work for Sorted Solutions in 2023, or that's my present thing. And in that, I'm focusing on like web design and illustration and motion graphics, you
Okay.
know?
Yeah.
Like
I completely agree with that, and I want to work on those things. I do want to ask you though before we run out of time. I think you mentioned something about an about page. I don't know if I'm really that into the idea of, because like I had a hard time with putting my I don't know. I kind of like I've reworked this a lot in the past year, and now the about page is kind of a part of the homepage. So I think I should probably take my photo off of there and take that away and just make it projects. Like as soon as you get into the website, the landing page is the project page. Would you say that that would be a good fix?
well, here, let's look at something that I'm working on right now. Give me one second. So I think so I would say like, listen, if you don't want to do an about page, I'm not saying you should, right? I'm not saying you should have an about page. What I would say is, I think there is something nice about, so the thing that I'm kind of like referencing is that like, I think there should be a section like your header, that again says like, this is what I do, this is who I am, in like 2 sentences. Heading, subheading, boom. Below that is where I'm talking about this idea of like an about section, right? So maybe there is a brief description about what it is that you do. And then instead of an about page, this is what we're talking about in terms of experience, where you have, hey, I worked here as this and this year, and maybe below it is a description, right? And then if we go back to, this idea of like selected work, like this is what, you know, this is sort of a layout, or this is how you kind of present the section of like, here are my 3 main projects that you want to see, and this is the thing, these are the things that I want to talk about, and these are the things that I do, right? So like, that's kind of what I'm talking about in terms of how to present this homepage and simplify, the structure of your portfolio website altogether. Because again, I think like, as you're saying it to me, you're like, yeah, I try to get people to go to the experience page, and I try to get them to click on my resume, and I try to get them to do this stuff. And they may not even be doing that stuff, right? So you just want to have that information there for them to see and
Right.
scroll through.
Kind of doing a lot with like analytics. I do click through my pages and see. I try to like if I'll put out, an application, I can see someone's there checking out my website. I try to see like what pages they went through. So it might be a little bit inefficient that way. I have changed my website, my portfolio, and my portfolio and my resume a lot in the past year. So I'm not so stuck with what I have. I think I can easily just scrap it and take the elements. But I would, it's been great advice so far. So I think I'm going to try to rearrange it in the ways that you've said. It's really good
Yeah,
feedback.
don't get too nitty gritty into like the analytics and stuff. Like, realistically, there's not enough traffic to a website. Like,
Right.
and I say this from personal experience because I did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the analytics. I was like, man, I got 50 clicks this week, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, people are going through your page, they're scrolling, they're clicking on 1 or 2 things, they're looking at it, and they're making a decision based on that, right?
Right.
With that in mind, let's make those 2 things, those 3 things that they're doing really good, right? So let's make
Mm-hmm.
sure that like those are the 3 projects or a couple of projects that are like super well put together, really comprehensive, have a lot of detail, have a lot of imagery. Let's expose all of the, like, yeah, you have a resume, great, and you'll submit that at some point, or they'll ask for it at some point, but let's get that experience on the page so that they understand what you've been doing, rather than like having it on this page or having it in this link. Just get it on the
Right.
page, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you
Any other
so
questions or
much.
anything like that?
Not that I can think of at the moment. I think that was really thorough and really helpful. I'm just looking through my portfolio right now, trying to see. So actually, so I mean, there's just a lot, as we've discussed, like it's just kind of like a lot of different links. How many how many projects, like how would you go about selecting the ones that you kind of like, think you should keep? Because there are some, that I kind of have kept on here. Like I had a friend who I was kind of going to advice for, and she kind of let me know that, like, sometimes more is better, more is just, more is more. But I do have some like older things that, like, for instance, my Whalehouse Points like freelancing stuff, I completely scrapped that from my portfolio at one point, and she had managed to convince me to keep it in. And I know that you think sometimes less is better, or adding more specific things. Like, how would you go about selecting, like, because I know people have different portfolios for different types of jobs they're going for. Um, how many is too much? Like, how much is too much? And then how would you go about selecting projects for your portfolio page, essentially?
What is the whale house thing that you mentioned?
Um, Let me see. So it is um some branding, some event branding I did. It's basically like posters for this restaurant. Here you go. So it has a little bit of everything in there. I just sent you the link.
Okay. So I can't even get to this just by clicking.
Hmm?
This is like hidden in your website, right?
Oh, it's in, okay, I see what you're saying. So it's in my if you click on like the marketing collateral, which is like, I think
Ah,
yeah, it's hidden. So that's a basically it. I'm not gonna try to sugarcoat it actually.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's deep in there. I had it even, I had it like more hidden at one point, and then I just got rid of it. It's a while ago. I made Snapchat filters, and like, I did some social media. I guess some like light social media management. They would have these like live music at their restaurant, and I would kind of like help them promote that, with hashtags and things. I did some posters for them. I did work on their website a little bit with like SEO and making posts, but I don't have
Mm.
a ton of that. I could probably look back in their website and see if it's still there, but it's
What
so many
is
years
the
ago.
work that you want to do?
The work that I want to do, um, I would think kind of like in house for like, I guess kind of like a consumer package product brand, maybe like a beverage or a drink, do some of their packaging, help them with their emails, their website, stuff like that. Kind of like some typical like graphic design kind of like stuff, but like also, I guess it's a little bit of everything, kind of like a generalist, I guess, for like a
Sure.
consumer package brand for like a
Okay.
product.
Okay. So I would I would approach it this way. The first two projects are focused on that, right?
Okay.
What are the projects or what are the things that you've worked on that kind of show that breadth that you've created logos, you've created packaging, you've created marketing materials, you've created emails, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be your first two projects. That's going to be, and you're going to go into detail in each of those sections, hey, this was a logo for this part of the brand or this objective. Then we got into the packaging, and this was that for that, and then email and blah, 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 boom, 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 boom. And the
Mm-hmm.
other thing that I'm noticing with like some of your work is that you also have like a logos kind of section. Um, I'm not a huge fan of like taking these buckets, and just like dropping everything in here. But I think there is a way that you can do it that is tasteful and that is, kind of just gives a brief, glimpse of, hey, I've done all this other stuff as well. I've worked with all these
Mm-hmm.
other companies as well. And so I think you could do that third project as like a bucket of your logos. Um, I'm not a huge fan, like the way you have it organized now. One, I can't get into illustration, so that's whatever. Um, and again, like because I'm not a fan of like separating the two, like I'd rather just show work that shows that I can be like I can do illustration rather than saying like, oh, and here's my illustration stuff also. Again, it gets in that
Right.
idea of like showing too much and that you're separating the two because you view them as like different,
Different
kind of like
things.
disciplines in a sense. Like
Okay.
to me, it's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge fan of like this bucket of like marketing and event collateral because again, like I want to know. I think the thing that it comes down to is like I want to know that you worked more closely with someone than the fact that they ask you for a task. I want to
Right.
know that you had input. I want to know that you strategized and help them find the clear objective or find that kind of solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like when you start to put these things in like these buckets of like, oh, here's an image that I did for one project, and here's an image I did for a separate project, and so on and so on. It just kind of tells me that like you've worked with a bunch of different people on very brief things. And
Mm-hmm.
that isn't necessarily speaking to experience. That's speaking to like, I can follow direction and I can take it, and that's fine. And I get that. We all do that. I'm not saying that's bad. But when we're trying to apply for these roles, it kind of doesn't connect as like experience that they want to see. And so that's why I think these first two projects need to be big, meaty case study sort of esque projects where you're going into detail about a bunch of things that you did for one client or one objective. And then the third one can be a bucket of like your logos.
Right.
Um, Marketing collateral and posters and stuff just never really present well in like unless you have like good mock-ups and you have them like on like in situation and like in environments on street walls, stuff like that. They just never look good flat. It's like, hey, this is a poster inside of like a metaphorical poster.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
So that's kind of like that's how I would approach doing re kind of like visiting how you want to present your work.
No, I think that's a really, really great help to hear that. I know, so I will say, like, it does need to be reworked in the presentation, but the bucket of logos, actually, quite a few of those, if not, like, I would say over half of them were for new product consulting.
Okay. So I mean, but like
That should be its own thing.
it could be. What I would say is like you want to watch out for like, is it just going to be a list of logos? Because like in new product consulting, is there things beyond just like a bunch of logos, right?
Yes. There was
So
like input and stuff. So yeah.
so think about that, right? And when you get through those things first, and when you're done with those things, think about, hey, do I need to actually add all these logos in, or can I just, again, go back to that idea of having a bucket? Because there's other logos for other things that I've worked on that just might, help to have like a nice variety in there.
Yeah, definitely. This has been really helpful. Thank you so much.
No problem, Brianna. After this, you'll get an email that just has like a few questions. That'll let me know where to send the link to this recording and the notes. And so the sooner you get that back to me, the sooner I can get through all that stuff. And you have my email. If you have any questions, later down the road, feel free to shoot me an email. And it was lovely chatting with you today. All right. I hope you found this helpful.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Cool. Have a good night, Brianna.
Awesome. And you as well. Bye.
Bye-bye.